JKB back with another episode. Today on the show I'm reviewing Octopath Traveler. Thank you to Nintendo Canada for the review copy. Octopath Traveler is an open world RPG where you play as one of 8 different adventurers who each begin their journey in a different way. They come from a different part of the open world map, and each of the characters has a unique path ability command that can be used when interacting with NPCs. I'm going to avoid the story here for anybody that wants to play the game. I will say that each of the 8 stories has the exact same structure. You'll be introduced to the character, and the character will overcome some sort of adversity. And once doing so, you will set out on an epic journey to continue that character's story. You'll learn each of the character's path abilities during the first chapter of each story as well. This is a classic RPG with turn-based battles in which you can attack using different weapons or elemental powers, as well as using abilities and items. The interesting hook here is the boost mode points that kind of give you this advantage in the battle. You get these points at the end of each of your turns, and you can store up to 5 at a time. These boost points can be used up to 3 at a time to boost a command. This will allow you to boost an attack or raise a defense or increase the ability of one of your teammates. All of the enemies in the game have a shield counter that can lower whenever you attack them with a weapon or an element that they're weak against. Once you break the counter, they will enter a stunned state where they will lose a turn and even receive more damage that turn. This for me is tied into the strategy of the game. You have to focus on the shield counters and figure out who to attack with the right weapons, because later in the game you'll get murdered quickly if you don't use the right weapons that will attack your enemies and weaken them. It's all about planning your attacks ahead of time and knowing when to use the right items. You can't go into any of the boss battles without being stocked up with healing items. This game is relentless, and you need to plan ahead. It'll come down to grinding, and I know that some people aren't keen on grinding in RPGs, but for me, the combat is so addicting that I have absolutely no problem with the grinding in this game. The characters in this go from a hunter who can capture and summon enemies into battle. There's a merchant who can find and steal money from enemies during the battles and make deals with NPCs in villages for cheaper priced items. There's also a woman who uses her beauty to persuade NPCs to follow her into battle. There's one thing I should make clear here, and that's the game is rated T for teen, and they really do push the limits of that rating. There's a moment between one of the 8 characters and her master where he implies that he's going to get sexually physical with her for her defiance, and he calls her a whore. I wasn't expecting that in this game at all, and I felt it was kind of a little out of place among some of the other light-hearted characters in the game. You can randomly find chests all over the open world. These will contain items that will help you on your adventure. There's small towns all over the open world map where you can shop for new weapons and gear, and like any classic RPG, it's important to focus on upgrading your weapons every few hours to kind of maintain a level battlefield. The rate of each battle can be a little frustrating at times. You'll see a chest sort of far out in the distance hiding behind a rock, and you get pulled into a battle at the last second. The rate seems to be based on how far you walk on the open world map. You can also run, but this limits how far you can go before getting pulled into a battle, and it also makes more noise, which can take away the ability to surprise your enemies at the start of a battle. Graphically, the game is using a term called HD 2D. This is by combining a 16-bit Super Nintendo character sprite and texture with a polygonal environment. I think this works flawlessly and looks absolutely gorgeous. It's designed to bring you back to the Super Nintendo days, but with kind of a next-gen feel. For me, the elemental effects in the game really stand out and kind of pushes me to want to experience all of them in the game. The world map is designed as a giant circle where you'll loop around and run into each of the other characters in the game. When you find one of them, you'll be asked if you'd like to experience that character's first chapter. If you decide you want to, it'll load into that character's story and you'll play the first chapter of that character. But the important thing here is you don't have to do this. For me personally, I'd rather play the game 8 times over and experience the game that way than load into the first chapter and then go back to the original character I chose. There's a few things that do frustrate me in the game, and I want to go over those things now. When you meet up with the other main characters in the game, it doesn't feel like it was designed to have those stories really mixing together. You can invite them to join your team and you can walk around with those characters, but I thought the main selling point of this game was the fact that there's 8 characters whose stories all tie in together. But at the end of it all, I kind of felt a little dissatisfied with the execution of that idea. The leveling pacing is also a little strange at times. You'll come across a cave right at the start of one of the characters' main stories, and it'll have a level of 20, which is designed for you to come back to later in your adventure, and you'll realize that the moment you walk into the cave and get absolutely murdered. The important part here is that the game does in fact warn you by showing you the level of the area you're about to enter. I didn't notice this on the screen earlier in the game, and I died so many times just looking around. There's also a leveling roadblock in place here where you'll have to be forced into grinding a character out before continuing. Now, as I said, grinding doesn't bother me that much, and I can assume it does kind of bother a few people out there, and that's why I'm just bringing this up. Those are the 3 major problems with the game that I have. I simply wish the characters really impacted each other's stories more, and at the end of it all, it isn't going to ruin the experience for you when you play the game, but the pacing later into the game does get frustrating in and out of the battles. The music is a high point for me, personally, because it's very fitting and well written for each of the characters. You'll notice a few tracks will play over and over during the battles, but that didn't really bother me because it's so beautifully made. Gameplay wise, it's an absolute blast and one of the main reasons for buying this game. It's all about the challenge of you facing all of these different enemy types and figuring out how you're going to level up your characters. You can pick the right weapons at the right time, but sometimes that might not be the case for a different type of enemy. It's all about figuring that out. I really love games that force you to plan ahead just a little bit, because when you do and everything works out, you'll feel amazing that you overcame that challenge in a game like this. Overall, Octopath Traveler is the perfect game for the Nintendo Switch. The game looks stunning in handheld mode. I really feel like it's designed to play in small sections, but it also works as a fully realized RPG with a world that brings you back to the past of the Nintendo, Super Nintendo glory days of RPGs. The characters' stories went from being cute and funny to absolutely disturbing, and that kind of kept me interested in all of the characters because I wanted to see what would happen next. You have one character who loves being a merchant and loves getting deals around the world, but you also have a character who's literally using her body to persuade NPCs to die in battle for her. So you'll get the full spectrum here. Once you build up your team, the game really shows its guts. Some of the battles will last 20, 30, 40 minutes. It'll be frustrating when you die halfway through a battle, but you should learn a few of the enemy's weaknesses as you are dying, and you'll come back and be better prepared. This game won't have any DLC. It's designed to be a finished game, and to be honest with me, I'm okay with that. I'm going to give this a solid 8.5 out of 10. I can't recommend it for everybody out there that dislikes this sort of turn-based combat in these types of RPGs, but there's a demo out on the eShop in case you wanted to check it out for yourself. At least give it a try. For the people out there who have been waiting for this game, get ready because it's highly addictive. It may not be exactly what we expected, but I recommend picking it up for the Nintendo Switch if you love the classic RPG days of the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo. It's worth the full asking price. If you like what I did in this video, please consider subscribing and hitting the like button because that really helps out. I'll see you on the next episode of JKB.